So typically, how the ratio will typically work is your 10 to 20% are going to make you an outrageous return. The other 20 to 30% are going to give you an okay return, or maybe get you your principal back. The rest of it is just going to go bust.
Okay, awesome. You were obviously in one of the world's biggest banks, and you were doing obviously work that you enjoyed. Then why did you take this big risk of leaving that? And I think you took a salary cut in order to move out of Goldman Sachs. Why would anybody do that?
Again, don't always draw lessons from my life, but this is something that I've always fundamentally believed in, that I do what feels authentic and what feels right to me. For the last decade or so, I have been a big believer in the Indian ecosystem. I think India is the place to work, India is the place to be in, and while Goldman could have offered me the opportunity to work at global locations, work on a global problem statement, I wanted to work more closer to home. The Samara experience had instilled in me the enthusiasm of what was happening in the Indian financial services ecosystem, right? And there was a lot of action happening there. Elevar happened at that stage. It's a venture capital fund that invests primarily in financial services and education. I mean, one of the deals that I worked on is now a unicorn called Lead School in the EdTech ecosystem. Elevar was the first investor, first institutional check that went into Lead School.
What was that check size like?
$5 to $7 million.
And what do you think would it be worth now? Based on whatever is publicly known.
Okay, let me answer this differently, right? When a very early stage venture capital fund comes in, typically they will look at a dilution for the first check anywhere between 15 to 25%, right? That's the typical range for a check size of that kind. Now I'll let you guys do the math around this.
Got it. So essentially what you're saying is that if somebody would have invested in a company, say $5 million, and would have probably gotten, say, 20% of that company, then if the company's valuation today is $1 billion, then how many X has that essentially gone? So you're talking about, and typically the returns in the VC world could be anywhere between 25X to even, I think I've heard numbers like 500X also.
Absolutely. You're absolutely bang on this, because that's how the VC model works. Guys, understand this, that the VC model of investing is not like your typical share market investing, right? You're going to invest across 20 companies. The idea is that most of them are going to fail, or most of them are likely to fail, right? But the one that succeeds will give you enough return to cover for your entire portfolio. Right? So typically, how the ratio will typically work is your 10 to 20% are going to make you an outrageous return. The other 20 to 30% are going to give you an okay return, or maybe get you your principal back. The rest of it is just going to go bust.
I mean, this sounds exciting. You clearly worked on a deal that also worked out so well. Then why didn't you stay put in the VC space, and essentially you moved from the buy side back to the sell side? Like, why did you do that?
Right. I think, and I think earlier also you asked, right? I wanted to work in the Indian ecosystem, so moving to Elevar was a big risk, because not only did I take a pay cut, I took a role cut, moved into, sort of a role lesser than what I was already at Goldman. But I fundamentally believed that career journeys are not linear. A lot of career journeys are also moving sideways and moving back and forth between different roles, sometimes moving down to make sure that you're realigning the direction that you are in, right? While it's good to be headed upwards, but are you even on the right ladder? I think that's the question that we all have to keep asking ourselves. I think while Elevar was a more established place, I think right after that, I joined a firm called Loestro Advisors, which is a boutique investment banking firm like Ankit was talking about. Well, we've been in business for 4 years. The firm, while it existed, it was at a very, very early stage when I joined them. I was probably the first hire. I mean, I was definitely their first hire. I think it allowed me the opportunity to build something. Elevar had, while the role was fun, it had established processes, it had established ways of doing things. They'd been in business for 20 years. They'd seen 3 to 4 fund cycles, and they're now, I think, raising their 5th fund, or it's already been raised. I wanted to do something which was a lot more entrepreneurial.
And you basically joined an investment banking startup.
That's correct. That would be the right way to put it. Because that was an opportunity to build an investment banking firm. And we're still in the process of building that. I mean, we've been on the league table a bunch of times in the last couple of years, going head on head with...
What is the league table? Can you explain?
So league table is something that gets tracked across the investing ecosystem quite religiously. It is basically a ranking that happens every quarter, every 6 months, annually, where top investment banks are ranked according to the deals that they've executed, both in terms of the number of deals as well as the size of deals that they've executed. And banks compete head on head to be, to top the league table. I think Goldman tops it almost every year, across different league tables. So I think on the Indian league table side, in India, we've been on the league table a bunch of times, going head on head with with a lot of more established banking competitors in the ecosystem. So it was an opportunity to sort of build that out, and that sort of felt right to me.
So tell us about some of your biggest deals, because at the end of the day, what has made the headlines and the newspapers? And
I'll take an example of a recent deal that I was a part of, that I'd run. PhysicsWallah had acquired a company called iNeuron. PhysicsWallah, as some of you know, they're doing a lot of stuff around test prep coaching, IIT, JEE, NEET. They were looking to build a new vertical around upskilling, which is something that didn't exist internally. And this is always a buy versus build decision, right? Can I build this internally? Is it more efficient for me to acquire something and that becomes a part of my portfolio and then grow it from there? iNeuron was one such opportunity. It was a 250 crore transaction. It's a transaction that's been talked about a lot in the media. The thing to to understand a lot about this is, while numbers and finance and all of those are important, right? By the end of it, there are 2 counterparties, and there are the people sitting behind both of those, on both sides of those transactions, right? There is a founder who is deciding, whether to sell his company, right? A baby that he's probably nurtured for the last few years, built it with his blood and sweat. And then there are a lot of stuff that goes around on the negotiating table, because in mergers and acquisitions, you also want to think about what is the deal structure, what are both parties getting, how much cash versus stock is being exchanged, and how do I as a banker protect the interest of my client. That was a fun transaction to work on, something that I've been proud to be a part of.
No, I think that also is a great time for me to talk about our investment banking programs at Altuni. We now have an investment banking program, and Payal and the Lostro team have been kind enough to kind of, be part of that program. They're also giving a project to people who join that, and will be super interesting to kind of learn from all her experiences of actual deal making over and above everything that she's been talking about. So anybody who's interested in investment banking, please do have a look at our iBanking course that we're doing with Payal and team.